On behalf of my colleagues, and welcome to today's GNCC Lunch and Learn, generously sponsored by YMCA of Niagara, on the topic of building great leaders and positive work culture. In today's session, we'll explore the essential elements of leadership and how fostering a positive workplace culture can drive organizational success. From cultivating strong leadership skills to nurturing a supportive environment, we will delve into practical strategies and actionable insights to empower both leaders and team members alike. Together, let's see what it takes to unlock the potential within ourselves and our organizations to create a workplace where innovation thrives, employees flourish, and success becomes inevitable. So thank you very much for joining us on this journey towards building actually a brighter future. My name is Mishka Balsam, and I will be your moderator for the next hour. And we are so pleased to be joined by Larry Anderson, CEO of Larry Anderson Consultants, an organization which has and is working with hundreds of small businesses focused on leadership training, strategy implementation, one-on-one performance coaching, and sales management training. But before I pass this webinar over to Larry, I would like to acknowledge that our Lunch and Learn is proudly sponsored by the YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services of Niagara, a steadfast partner in our Lunch and Learn sessions. Their support is invaluable, and as they offer employment programs that assist job seekers from entry-level positions to senior roles, making the job search journey more manageable. And at the same time, they provide extensive employment services and programs for employers. And now with us is Kelly Jones, Program Manager for the YMCA of Niagara, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Kelly.
Thanks, Mishka. We appreciate the GNCC inviting the YMCA of Niagara for this opportunity to obviously talk about not only our services, but and how they can connect to strong leadership like Larry will be talking today. You know, my earlier part of my career was child and youth coordinator at some different YMCAs in Niagara, and we always had strong leadership and training programs. And I think it's important, no matter what the age or what the workplace, you know, developing those leaders is a crucial environment. And with us as the YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services, we've got a lot of job seekers, new Canadians as well, that are seeking leadership or potential leadership positions to work with employers here in Niagara, many of who are on the call today. And so if you are looking for your next leader, feel free to access our free services between our offices in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Thorold. And we can obviously help job seekers, employers willing to hire and ready to hire, and also looking for different funding and training opportunities that we could have different resources and access to different services for. So most importantly is that the YMCA has a history since the Industrial Revolution of developing leaders, and we're excited to hear what the GNCC and of course what Larry is going to be delivering upon. So thank you for the opportunity, and we appreciate being involved in this Lunch and Learn.
Kelly, thank you so very much for being with us and being with us throughout the year on most of our Lunch and Learns. It's really, we could not do it, and whatever we do and all that we do without actually partners like you by our side. But I also wanted to stress your point that you made, how incredibly important you are for employers and to employees in actually staying and maintaining on the right path, and a right path for their own future too. So thank you for all that you do. Before we delve into today's enlightening webinar, I'd like to introduce a brief 5-minute financial download from C.R. Smith Financial Services, Inc., brought to you by Brandon Curry, advisor at C.R. Smith Financial and Sun Life Financial. It's a standing item on our Lunch and Learns, and we really do appreciate actually the insight given to us in light of how important and how many conversations are taking place around finances these days, and how crucially important it is to all of us. So Brandon, thank you so very much for being with us, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, Mishka, and for the introduction. We really appreciate this opportunity to sponsor the Lunch and Learn. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. My name is Brandon Curry, and along with my colleagues Matt Milner and Jay Fast, we are from C.R. Smith Financial. As a matter of fact, May 2024, C.R. Smith Financial will have celebrated 50 years of doing business and financial work in the Niagara region and also Canada abroad. Now, three main facets of our business. There's insurance, which encompasses life insurance, health insurance, and disability. Wealth, we are a full service brokerage that has partnerships with all the major fund companies and ETF companies in Canada. And we also are one of the largest group in personal benefits brokers as well when we do group RSP plans that are fully customizable. The wealth component, though, is specifically regarding the most recent federal budget update, which is what Mishka alluded to, because people are talking about being able to afford a home and being able to just make ends meet. Specifically, I wanted to address the federal budget today around the ability to access more money for a down payment for first-time homebuyers. There are many different ways to access money to create a large enough down payment. However, the three most common ways that are accessible pretty much to everyone is utilizing the RRSP savings through the home buyers plan, utilizing savings in the tax-free savings account, and utilizing savings in the recently created first home savings account. To tackle the RSP, which is the most common and widely known, in the most recent federal budget, it was stated that once the budget has passed and has reached royal assent, first-time home buyers would be able to access up to $60,000 in your RRSP if it is paid over a period of 15 years in equal installments. It is important to know that if you access this money through the home buyers plan, there will be no tax withheld from the withdrawal like other RRSP withdrawals. Secondly, there are time frames on how soon you can access RRSP contributions. So it is very important that you deal with an investment professional. Otherwise, a hefty tax bill could be coming your way. Finally, if the minimum each year is not returned back to the RRSP, that amount would be added to the taxpayer's income for that particular year. The tax-free savings account, unlike the RRSP, any and all contributions do not receive an income deduction, which helps towards taxes owed. However, all growth within the tax-free savings account is, as per the name, tax-free. All withdrawals are tax-free. There is no minimum on what you can withdraw, and you receive all that contribution room back the following year. The RRSP, unfortunately, is once you use that room, you lose it. Finally, the first home savings account. The FHSA is like the tax-free savings account, and the RRSP had a baby, but you got the best of both worlds. For example, like the tax-free savings account, the first home savings account has the following. Contribution room is granted. Currently, the max each year is $8,000 to a lifetime maximum of $40,000. All growth within the account is tax-free. All withdrawals, as long as it's for a home, are tax-free. And anything you can invest in a tax-free savings account, you can also invest in a first home savings account. Like the RRSP, the first home savings account has the following. All contributions result in an income deduction. This does not erode RRSP room. You can utilize existing RRSP money to contribute to the first home savings account. Once you use your contribution room, you lose it. Unlike the RRSP or the TFSA, the first home savings account only allows you to carry forward 1 year's worth of contribution room. So if you were to open one up in 2024 and not contribute to it, the maximum in 2025 would be $16,000. Due to all these rules, it is imperative that you do it correctly, as improper paperwork and potentially not watching your contribution room limits can result in a 1% per month penalty from the CRA. So as always, please deal with an investment professional. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks very much for the opportunity, Mishka.
Thanks so very much, Brandon. And first of all, let me say and extend from all of us, congratulations on 50 years. That's quite extraordinary, actually, and a milestone to celebrate. So cheers and hooray to you. And thank you so very much also for bringing forward a very timely element and update, because so many of us have looked inside and out at the budget and looked for opportunities. So thank you very much for linking it to housing and the ability to buy a home, something that is so critically important to so many of our participants. So thank you so very much for that. And on that note, It is now my really great pleasure to actually move this part of the webinar over to Larry. And Larry is going to be probably have a presentation for about 20-25 minutes of time, approximately. This is meant to be a very interactive format, as we always have with our Lunch and Learn. So following the presentation, we're going to have and hope to answer all of your questions. Some of you have already submitted questions to us in advance, and we're committed to getting to all of them. And if you have any questions that are coming up, I will watch the chat and then look for those ones to ensure that actually all of them are being addressed. And I think if you have or experience any technical difficulties, please just utilize the chat, send us a quick note, and we'll look into it for you and hope to be able to assist you as well. Additionally, if you would like to enable live transcript, you can find that option on your Zoom screen as well. And it might be something that's important to you. Please know that this session is being recorded and will be shared with you following this meeting as well. And on that note, Larry, I've been looking forward to this one. It's a key topic that so many of us are actually always wondering about. So many of us are committed to continuously improving, never actually resting on our laurels and thinking we have it all figured out, but rather actually looking at ways to continuously improve and improve also because we are seeing so many changes happening in the marketplace too. So really looking forward to your presentation and equally looking forward to getting to all the questions. On that note, over to you.
Thank you, Mishka. Great to see you, by the way. And congratulations, Brandon, on your team's 50 years as well. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm just going to attempt to share my screen here real quick. Excellent. So thank you for allowing me to come in today. This is something I'm very passionate about, is talking about culture. Most of the companies I work with, this is the topic that we spend a lot of time on. And it really never, sadly, this might disappoint some people, you're never finished. You're always working on culture. So what I decided to do today is I wanted to simplify it and put it into 4 sort of buckets that if you're paying attention to these 4 things, you're on your way to a great culture. And then lastly, I want to talk about what is the leader's role in developing this. So when you're looking at your company, the first thing you have to do is look in the mirror and say, do we have values that are core to our business? And when I say core, the key word here is, do we live them? There should be 2 or 3, maybe 4 values that the senior leadership of the organization or the ownership of the organization believes in their belly, right? In their gut, that these are things that guide our decisions, that we live on a daily basis, and that we hold each other accountable to. And if those values are in place, that's something really solid you can build on. Now, there's another type of value called an aspirational value. Those are things that we'd like to believe in, but we don't consistently live them. So I have a client where they talked about how accountability was going to be one of their core values. And we said, okay, that's a great value to have. And then we talked about how people were often late handing in work. People were often late delivering products to their clients. And I said, so it seems like we're not really living this value. It's something we'd like to have. We also talked to one client once, they wanted to have urgency as a core value. And I said, okay, well, how are we living that? And he said, well, we're not living it, but we really need to. So it's not a core value if you're not living it and it's not shown in the actions and the language of the people there. The next part of the company, when you're looking to see if your culture is on the right path, is, do I have the right people in the right seats? So the right people simply means, do I have individuals that live our values and understand our vision and where we're trying to go with this company, but also are willing to do what is required to get us there? So they're leading by example. And then the right seat is, do I have people that have the right knowledge, skills, and experiences and ability to do the job? And if I can match up right people with right seat, then I can have a dynamic team that we can keep working forward on. And the last part of making sure your company's set up for a solid culture is, do we have documented and trained processes? And the reason we focus on this early, excuse me, is because your job as a leader is to set your people up for success. If we don't know how to do things on a repeatable basis so that we're consistently producing the right results, then we're setting our people up to fail and not to succeed. So we have to spend time and look at how are the things we do documented, and are we properly training everyone? I've noticed that a lot of the companies I've been working at lately, training keeps getting pushed down the line, and every level that we push it down has a different idea of what training is. And then what ends up happening is people make up their own way of training. Well, this is how I do it, so this is how I'm going to show you how to do it. And then we end up with disjointed processes and misaligned expectations. And then management will come down and say, hey, why isn't this happening? Well, I don't know. This is the way I was trained. And then we have a misalignment. So first of all, look at your company. Do I have the core values in place that we're living, the right people in the right seats? And have I created processes that are in place for my people to know what to do? Next, I want to look at the environment. And if any of you remember from some of your school days, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, excuse me, talks about how most of us need safety, belonging, and mattering. And in that order, as a matter of fact. So when I talk about safety as creating an environment, I'm not talking about hard hats and work boots, although that's important. I'm talking about an environment where people feel safe to push themselves, to learn and grow. And when I say safe, meaning that they're not going to be ridiculed or punished, they're more likely going to be coached and nurtured. When you're teaching someone something new, we should expect a lot of mistakes because it's new. And actually, if I'm teaching someone something new and I don't see mistakes, I get nervous that they're not trying hard enough. So are you creating an environment where your people feel that they can safely push themselves and drive themselves forward? If you have, the next step is we want to create a state of belonging, an environment where people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. Are you sharing your vision? Are you sharing your values? Are you sharing where we're trying to go together as a group? Cultures that are really strong have people that feel bonded together for a common goal. People that feel disjointed and having self-protection, those are usually the more toxic cultures that I've run into, where they don't have that one thing they believe in. So they think, well, then I better just take care of myself. And the last part of the environment is, do people feel like what they do matters? Are people recognized and appreciated for their work? Now, recognition comes up a lot because people feel, well, I can't recognize someone for everything. And that's right. You can't recognize someone for everything, because then it starts to become, everyone just takes it for granted and it loses its impact. But recognizing people for going over and above, recognizing people for living the values, recognizing people for helping their fellow teammates, and also making people feel appreciated, that your contribution is making an impact on what we're doing here and we value it. So the company is set up. Now we're creating the environment. Now the next thing we want to do is look at the leader. And the leader has to wear 3 hats. And they have to be well trained and also mentored and coached in these 3 hats as well. So the first hat the leader has to wear is the manager hat. I call that the getting stuff done hat, right? Managers are about deadlines, task completion, organization, getting things done. That's that manager hat, and we all need that. The challenge is a lot of leaders live most of their life in a manager role, and they're not spending enough time on the people side. The mentor side is that trainer, that advisor, that one who's giving advice, who's helping people along, who's job shadowing people, making sure people feel connected to the work, making sure people are being trained properly and thoroughly and following the processes. That's that mentor role. And then we hope that people graduate to what I call the coaching level, where now people start to take personal responsibility for their own successes. And as a coach, I'm no longer telling you what to do. I'm asking you what you think you should do to be successful. And then, of course, I'm helping you provide that guidance going forward. So the leader has to wear 3 distinct hats now to be really successful. And if you have strong leaders in your team that do this, you'll find your culture is vibrant. People feel really engaged and connected, and they really trust their leaders because they know when to put the manager's hat on and let's get some stuff done, but they know also when to mentor and coach individuals. Then last is the employee. The employee plays a huge part in the development of a culture, but unless those first three rings of the bullseye here are not in place, the employees left sort of on their own. But if we've done that, we should be finding that our employees are more confident. And more confidence comes from mastery. Mastery is the ability to I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm contributing. I feel like my skills really matter. And what I'm doing makes a big difference. Engaged means I feel part of something. I feel like I'm with the team, that everyone has my back and I have their back, and we're in this together. And I enjoy coming to work. Happiness is underrated, you know. It's something that we don't spend enough time talking about, is how happiness has such a big impact on culture. And the last one, the one that every employer I work with is looking for, is accountable people. People want to be accountable to people that are accountable to them. And that's something you really need to be paying attention to, especially as a business owner or a senior leader. Am I accountable to my people first? If I am, then they will be accountable to me. Everything really starts with looking in the mirror. As a leader, as the business owner, have I looked at my company, my environment, and my leaders? And if I have, then this is the result I should end up with. I should end up with confident, engaged, accountable staff. Now, with that said, I wanted to sort of break down the leader's role in all of this. So I like to use visuals because I just like to simplify things. This is sort of like level 5 growth of an employee, for lack of a better title. And at the same time, what is the leader doing to nurture that growth, and what happens, what goes along? So at level 1, everyone has that WIFM, that what's in it for me thing, that self-focus. And this isn't a bad thing. Every human being's favorite topic in the world is themselves, right? So an employee focused on themselves is very natural, and it's the correct thing. And based on what I mentioned before about Maslow, if I don't feel safe, I can't progress on any further. So the employee is worried about, how am I going to be treated? What's in this for me? How am I going to be compensated? How am I going to be coached and trained? And how am I going to progress through my career? So that's the first thing. So the leader's focus, while the employees focused on themselves, is establishing trust and safety with their people. Trust is established by keeping your word, by being open and transparent, and safety is created by giving people the opportunity to learn and grow and make mistakes without punishment, make mistakes based around mentoring and coaching. If I have that situation, then people will move quickly out of level 1 and into level 2, where they become a team player. Now they want to know, how do I fit into the team? How am I making a contribution? How is what I do mattering to everybody else around me? You know, when you look at your company, if you have multiple departments, every department is vital and every department is connected to the next. That's how you know your culture's working, is when departments are not just making decisions for their own department, but they're looking at how it's going to impact the next one. The leader's job is to create that sense of belonging, letting people know how their contributions impact everyone else, and letting people know that their ideas and their input is needed and valued at the organization. If that's in place, then we can move on to level 3. Now the employee can really dig into that mastery level I talked about before, that building their skills, getting really good at what they do. And as a leader, you really need to focus on that, making sure you know that, recognizing them for their extra effort, for their skill development, for their ability to learn new things. That grows their confidence. And one of the biggest responsibilities, I believe, of a leader is to transfer your confidence in that employee to that employee. Confidence builds confidence. So the more I feel that, wow, my manager believes in me, my skills are working, I'm contributing, people will want to learn more and more and grow. And at that level, at the level 3, where they feel that confidence, getting people to take accountability becomes so easy. But accountability is not just about doing what you said you were going to do. Accountability is also about someone taking self-awareness, looking in the mirror of themselves and saying, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my blind spots? What are the things I should be paying attention to? Have I created some of my own challenges? Can I be part of correcting some of that? Are any of the negative things happening to me at work? Am I partly responsible for those things? When you have this self-awareness employee, self-aware focused employee, that accountability is no longer a stern discussion with people. It just becomes so natural that people want to own what they're doing. And that leads us to level 5. And this is where we start to develop our leaders, our future leaders, our next group of leaders. And I call it the leaders focused on ownership, people owning their own success, owning their own results, owning their own path forward. What a great feeling when you get employees to this level. The conversation is so much different. People just want to push themselves. They want to drive. And this is where we develop that environment where people want to be a leader and they want to run with things and they want to pull your company forward. And this is where you get great ideas and people problem solving on their own without you having to, as the owner or the senior leader, having to get involved. Now, at the bottom of my diagram here, I put growth of professionalism. Professionalism, it's a big word for me, and I've really been concentrating on it the last little while with a lot of the folks I'm coaching. And I always ask that question, what does it mean to be a professional? And to me, it means a few things. One is that professionals are always getting better at their craft. They're always focused on where can I be stronger? Where can I be better? Professionals also are great communicators. They're prepared to tell people when they don't have the answers, and it's okay because we've created that environment of safety and belonging and mattering. It's okay if I say I don't have all the answers, but I own it. I still dig in and try and find how I can help push the business along or push the solution ahead. And a professional also wants others around them to be great. So they don't just focus on themselves, they focus on everyone around them and say, if I'm doing well, but my teammates are struggling, that's not good. That's not what we're after. We all want to be together. I've heard a term of working group and team, and that they're two different things. A working group is a group of individuals going after a common goal, but their first priority is themselves. And a team is a group of individuals going after a common goal, and their first priority is wherever the weak area is, they put all their energy there. So it's not themselves first, it's the weakest area. And you look at your business and say, do I have a working group or do I have a team? And that's a big part of being a professional. And then at the very bottom, I just outlined sort of where that managing, mentoring, and coaching hat, where you could wear those based on wherever your employees are. If you have multiple employees in your organization, they're going to be at multiple levels of the diagram here. Some will be 1 and 2, and some will be up at 4 and 5. And some employees will get stuck and they can't seem to get past it. And that's where you have to spend some extra time, or you have to have the conversation about, is this the right person in the right seat? So with that said, that's it for the presentation, Miska.
Thank you so very much, Larry. I really do appreciate actually that overview. I think it was very concise and brief, and I think it leads perfectly into the questions that we actually have today. So I'm wanting to get everyone who is with us today actually participating in this dialogue that we have. So my first question, Larry, is not to you, but it's to all of our attendees. And I was wondering if you could utilize the chat function and maybe give us an idea what are 1 or 2 qualities that you believe are essential for a great leader in a workplace. You might have personally worked with some individuals whose skills you've really admired. You might personally hold some of the skills and feel that it does make a difference. But if I could ask everyone to maybe utilize the chat function just to give us 1 or 2 qualities. It could be just self-awareness could be one. It could be number, flexibility, inclusivity. It could be a number of different ones that are coming forward. And so thank you. So we have that's great interaction here. So we have humble, actually, which was maybe not the first one that comes to mind. Communication, and I think Larry had spoken about that. Understanding, I think that is a key one. And we have a couple of questions around understanding. So I'm really glad for the participant to have brought this up, because it's also linked to empathy, which a couple of other ones have as well. Here's someone, and that's great, actually also looking at the commitment of lifelong learning. So that is also another one that is it's critical, and self-awareness, which we have spoken about and will actually speak to at the same time. So thank you very much for everyone for answering that. And there's actually, it's so interesting to see. I had looked at a recent Gallup poll in preparation for today's Lunch and Learn, and it indicated up to 70% of variances in an employee's engagement depend actually on their leader. So it's really the leadership of the company, the leadership of individuals around them that are really key to all of that. So it's really good to see and get that feedback. So Larry, how can leaders make an honest evaluation of their company culture? We hear from our attendees that are saying, here are some of the things that we're looking at. And among them are leaders themselves. And we all want to have really a fair evaluation and saying, this is what our culture is like. Because we have to have an understanding of our culture to be able to be at our best in moving it forward. How can leaders evaluate the company culture? And is it possible to do this from within the organization?
100%. So a couple things. The first is the owner or the senior people have to want to. So if they want to put their head in the sand, then there's no hope. But if they want to look at their organization, then there's lots you can do. Now, I have a simple little tool that I use, and it's a team building exercise as well. So I call it Celebrate, Tolerate. And I'll just explain it real quick. So you get a flip chart or a whiteboard, and you make two columns, and the left column is celebrate and the right column is tolerate. In the celebrate column, you ask your team to come up with everything that makes us a great company, that makes us great to work at, that makes our customers love us, that makes you want to get up in the morning and come into work. So let's list all those things. So it could be lifelong learning, like you mentioned, Miska. It could be we recognize people for their work, whatever it is. So we make this full list of all the things we celebrate. Then we go to the tolerate side and we say, what are the things we put up with here that take away from who we are, that take away from us being able to live our values or execute the way we need to, or reward people or recognize people, or take away from how our customers view us. And we make this tolerate list. Now, when you're done, if your tolerate line is longer than your celebrate line, that's an indication that we have a lot of work to do. And then if our celebrate is much bigger than tolerate, then we have some positive things, but we still have things we tolerate. So then what you do is you would choose one or two things off of the tolerate column. What can we work? What are the most important things we should take care of and get off of this list and fix? That exercise does two things. If you can get your team together, I've done this where we've had a whole company do this exercise together. It was very impactful. And then you show your people you really mean business by starting to chip away at that tolerate list. And then you can start to see the effects on the business, and it really makes a big effect. So that's a simple tool that everybody could implement right away.
Actually, that's actually a great tool when you look at it, because we're actually even making the distinction between what we celebrate and what we tolerate. Even to ask ourselves what we celebrate, we often might not look at that quite regularly and see it in such a way too. And it's good to have sometimes apply our positive eyes and positive side actually on things that are actually right here.
Some people take it for granted too, that the celebrate side, right? Just forget about it.
Yeah. I was wondering about something. We have over the last year or year and a half, we are in Canada often speaking about in Niagara as well, about affordability. And this brings me back to Brandon Curry's opening remarks, and something that is really key to many Canadians right now, where we maybe are in a situation where overall productivity as a country has gone down. That has had an impact on our affordability, on our disposable income, and in many ways, or in some ways, also on our quality of life. So when it comes to that, I'm looking now at compensation, because we're talking about leadership, training, skills that we're looking at. What impact does compensation have? And compensation, by that, I mean, it's not just your salaries, but it might be your benefits, might be the work that you have. You can maybe work in a hybrid format. You might be able to work remotely. All the things around it that also impact things that we might celebrate at work, that might give us a sense of well-being around and with the company. How does that impact leadership? How does that, what is valued more or equally as much? How does it impact individuals making a choice that this is my employer of choice and this is my place of well-being where I'm working?
Yeah, great question. So when you look at Maslow, he talks about, physiological needs is the base of it, that until those are satisfied, we can't move forward. So the same is with an employee. If someone feels underpaid, that has a big effect on them. But I do find that at a certain point, when someone's making a certain amount of money, any incremental growth in that salary has very little impact on their life at work as compared to their interaction with their leaders or their team, or them being nurtured and grown, their ability to master a new skill or be promoted or whatnot. So I'm not saying that paying our staff is not critically important, but most people who leave, if they say it's money, unless they're grossly underpaid, it's really usually not just money. They look at money as that outlet because they haven't felt recognized. They don't feel they're in a safe environment. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel like what they do matters, or they don't feel like they belong. So money is an easy thing to say, yeah, I'm going here because it's $5 more an hour. I'm going here. But that $5 more an hour, yes, sure, everyone would take it. It doesn't have as big as impact on someone's life as feeling self-respected and feeling appreciated, feeling like you're contributing to something. So if you have a lot of turnover in your organization, it's not necessarily money. It's people are not feeling the culture. At the same time, I've worked with a lot of organizations, Miska, that pay people very well and still have really bad cultures. So it doesn't always equal, I'm paying my people well and we're going to have this great environment. But paying people properly is absolutely critical to even be able to have other conversations. So if you're paying your people properly, they feel that. Now, the whole economy stuff, that's Brandon's world. I'm not going to try and go down that path. But people have to feel that there's a bigger thing than just a dollar sign. If I'm just there for a paycheck, I'm probably not going to be there very long. But also, if it's a warm, fuzzy place, but I have to eat craft dinner every day, I'm not going to be there very long either. So we have to have a match of the two.
Yeah, and what we hear from a lot of individuals and employees too, and what a lot of studies seem to support, is people looking for a sense of purpose in what they're doing. We're spending a significant amount of time at work with people and we need to have the sense of purpose. So chambers are set up as nonprofits. We have in Niagara a high number of nonprofits and charities overall. And often it's a bit harder for them to compete against some of public sector jobs and others. But I think where employees are choosing to stay is because of the purpose. And the same goes for the private sector too, that some companies are really good at getting people to really get engaged in that purpose. And then it becomes more than just a paycheck. It becomes part of your life. It's an integration of your life and other goals at the same time.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot, Mishka, from some of the clients I work with, that being in Niagara, you mentioned it's hard to recruit sometimes to get some great talent because they want to go to the bigger cities. But you're right, when they create that whole package, that's not just money, but also all these other things, and they believe in what the company's trying to do, I find we can compete pretty well.
Yeah, it does make a difference actually overall. Again, I would love to get our attendees and participants a little bit more involved. And I see a couple of questions coming in, but I was wondering about something, and that is the question: what keeps you engaged in your workplace? What keeps you there? What motivates you? As we're having the question or discussion here around purpose, maybe Niagara being the right place to be and to live, if I can put that question out to you, what keeps you engaged in your workplace? We'd love to get a sense from you and a little bit of feedback of what makes and can make a difference. And then we'll share it with everyone at the same time. So thank you for helping us out there in this part of the conversation. Larry, I also wanted to come back on something that you had said earlier, and it was related to happiness. And I thought it was a very interesting point. Just in a couple of months back, I read the latest book by Arthur Brooks, and it's called Build the Life You Want. He wrote it with Oprah together, has done a number of like tech talks around it and podcasts and everything else. Arthur Brooks, for those of you who don't know him, he is a Harvard professor, and he in their Harvard's business school actually teaches happiness specifically. And so it's an interesting place in a business school and such as Harvard to actually teach happiness. And his approach happens by almost, and the way he looks at it is a combination of neuroscience and philosophy and traditions, and he combines them in his book in moving forward. And I was wondering if you can expand on maybe the role that we have as individuals in our well-being and the role that maybe a company or a leader plays in our sense of well-being.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that happiness is a choice, that I can choose in my life what I want. As a leader, you can't make people happy, but you can definitely create an environment where people have an opportunity to be happy. And that really, when you look at a leader, that's their number one role, is to create that environment. If I feel safe and I belong and what I do matters, happiness is an easier path. And so that's the leader. Really what we have to do is make sure that's always on our forefront. So the other day, Mishka, I was talking to someone who was just recently promoted to a director level. And they said, I really don't do a lot of work anymore. Mostly what I do is people stuff. I said, yeah, absolutely. The higher up you are in an organization, your number one priority should be your people over everything else. If you take care of your people, if you make sure that everything you think about is about them and creating that environment, they will take care of your sales. They will take care of your customers. They will take care of your equipment. They will take care of those things. If I don't take care of my people, then they don't want to take care of those other things. So that sense of well-being really starts with the environment. If we are not really bought into that, and I can't emphasize it enough that the safety, belonging, and mattering, those are the things that are most important to employees. Whether they can articulate that to you or not, that's what they want. And if those three things are in place, if that's all you concentrated on as a leader, is really creating that environment, then people have a chance to be happy, to have a well-balanced life, to feel lower stress. We're not going to get rid of that. I mean, stress is part of every job, and we have competing priorities all the time at work. But if I feel that I'm in this with other people, not by myself, it's a huge impact on that well-being and happiness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. We have a couple of wonderful answers, actually. I've come back to the question, what keeps you engaged in your workplace? And it's along the same lines as elements that we have just spoken about. So here is one person saying recognition is part of the everyday culture. And you had spoken to that as well. How do we recognize people and how critically important that is? I think recognition actually speaks very loudly to, I see you. And I think we don't often have that because we see balance sheets and other things, and we maybe and customer concerns and complaints and supply chain interruptions. We often don't stop on our tracks and saying, I truly see you and I celebrate you. The other feedback we're getting here is an alignment of values, and that comes really core. It's actually interesting to me to see how many organizations actually have values, but if you ask the team to say, what are our company's values? Often they're not as clear on it, and maybe it's not seen as often. feeling impact, making a difference, again, speaks to the person, a
Yep.
sense of purpose, exactly what was said. Glad to hear that. Setting a clear goal. I think there's an aspect to that that I think is really important too, with that feedback we're just getting, because setting a clear goal is the idea that we can actually measure it. And we don't just say, oh, we're doing well, but we clearly can say this is our accomplishment and here are the efforts that we have put behind it.
Mhm.
Another one, and that is really interesting. This individual is saying turning colleagues into friends, after work hangouts, sharing hobbies, etc. It always loved workplaces like that. So it really does become then, in some cases, some people look at it as almost a second circle of friends or family,
Yeah.
but a sense of, I know more about you, you've got my back, I understand you better, and because of that, actually it means that makes a difference. It was actually a while back that I was on panel discussion, and it was really interesting, and it was mainly with actually accountants and auditors, and ones that were sent all across Ontario to doing different things. And in the hiring practices, they looked naturally for the skills that are needed. And then the individual also said, and when the other part of it is the likability factor. The idea that I actually can send the two of you up north for 2 months on a project where you're doing the auditing of whatever needs to be done, being in the field, and that you actually had each other's back in the sense of likability and saying, like, I'm willing to do this because of that aspect of it. So I just, so first of all, my thanks to all participants. I really, really appreciate you being part of this dialogue and your feedback, which speaks to all of that Larry had indicated. Now, one question, Larry, that had come forward is when there is a negative or toxic workplace culture and it becomes prevalent, how hard is it to root it out and to replace it? And what do leaders or individuals need to do so?
So a toxic work environment is incredibly difficult to turn around, but it can be turned around. But I will tell you, it's 100% on the leadership team to drive that. If the leadership team is not on the same page, it won't work. So I have run into quite a few of those in my career. And if the folks running the organization truly want to turn it around, you can, but it starts with the leader. The celebrate, tolerate exercise is great to get you started, but it really becomes down to the behavior, right? So are the leaders showing the behaviors that they don't want, but they're saying, don't look at us, we want you to act this way, but we're going to continue to act this way. So it has to start with the leadership team leading by example and setting the parameters. So I'm a big believer in watching the language we use around our folks. So if I use excuse words like try or maybe or things like that, then I'm letting my staff use try or maybe or I got busy or things like that. And those can contribute to a negative work environment because now no one's accountable to anyone. Everyone's after their own protection. So it can happen, but it has to start with the people at the top. They have to get on the same page first. And I always recommend that the first thing you do is start with your core values. If you can identify 2 or 3 things that as a group we truly believe in and live, then we can start to work that through the organization. But I've seen so many core value exercises where, you know, they go to Muskoka for the weekend. It's mostly a lot of wine drinking. They come back, they put up posters or plaques. We're done. That's good. No, coming up with the values is step 1. And then we never stop talking about them forever. And not just talking about them, but showcasing what does it mean to live them? What does it look like? What does success look like? What are the impact on these values? Every value we have should have a story that connects to the company. So core values is where I would start. And then from there, I would look at my people. Do I have the right people in the right seat? And if I do, then I have to create that environment to let them thrive and shine. And if I can do that, then now I got a fighting chance. You know, just, I know I'm rambling on here, but sometimes I'll get asked to come into an organization. Can you coach Bob because Bob's a problem? And then when you peel back the onion, Bob's a problem because there's so many other problems that aren't being addressed. we don't have values. We're not living anything. There's no consistency. Bob doesn't have an environment. Bob's not feeling supported. And by the way, there's 17 other Bobs here that are struggling. So we have a leadership issue here, not really a Bob problem. So behavior always comes before performance. So if we're having performance issues in our organization or culture issues, it's because of behaviors usually of the leaders.
No, it makes full sense. On that note, one of the other questions that actually has come in to this one to be addressed actually during this webinar is the question if there's any kind of personality type or attributes that you find to be unsuited to leadership. And I actually personally feel it's good for individuals, or it's good for us to have an awareness of that, because sometimes maybe we are more content in some position versus others. But so the question is, any kind of personality type or attributes that you find are not meant or not suited for leadership?
Not suited. So believe it or not, ego is a good thing. Being a confident person is good. Being an arrogant person is not. So there's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. I also find, like, to me, my definition of empathy is being able to see someone's point of view, trying to understand it, even if I don't agree with it. And that's the stumbling block that people get into. So I think someone who can have that empathy of, I can see your point of view, I don't have to necessarily agree with it, but I can see it. And if I can see it, now we can talk about it. And if we can't talk about it, we can't really get anywhere. So I think a leader, the negative aspects would be ego that turns into arrogance and that lack of empathy. Those are the two biggest ones for me. And also someone who won't listen. Someone who's a respond first, not a listen first person. They tend to have a real trouble with leadership as well.
It makes sense to me. Larry, I was recently at a conference. It was an out-of-town conference, and an individual came to the table we were sitting at, and the individual left. And then the person next to me turned to me and said, like, I don't think that person would ever fit into our culture or into our company. Not my company, or our, like, not our chamber, was another company. And I asked them why not. And they said the whole time they talked about themselves was always in first person. Everything that accomplished was always in first person. And I thought it's interesting how all of us are listening for different cues to saying, here is a good match, and here is maybe one that maybe at this point doesn't as much fit into it. So that was there.
That's a great point. I mean, leaders are, when you think about it, a leader is a servant, right? That's your job.
Yes.
You were there to serve your team. And when I say create that environment, that's what I'm saying. Like, create a place where everybody shines. There's one vice president I worked with, Mishka. She's just an amazing leader. And everyone says, "Oh, you were just so brilliant." She goes, "No, I'm not very good at any of the stuff my people do. They're all fantastic." She surrounds herself with experts, superstars, and just creates an environment where they just can fly and flourish. But she looks like the genius.
Yeah, it's so
right?
true. Yeah, absolutely. Here's one more question that had been texted to us. And the question is, are there any specific metrics or KPIs that can be used to quantify the success of leadership training initiatives in fostering a positive work culture? And I think that's an interesting way to look at it. So here are ways that all of us are motivated to create a positive work culture for everyone around us. And if we make that the basis of it, but what KPIs can we apply to seeing, are we getting better at it? Are we improving it? What are some of the things that we can actually instill, or put in place in our organizations that would measure that?
Yeah, I know that culture and all that's the mushy stuff. Like, how do you measure all this? And I love the KPI question, because I'm a logical person myself. I love to have measurements. Now, this is just a funny line, but one thing is, from HR friends, is less HR complaints. That's one metric. But so yeah, putting numbers on, we're not going to necessarily see, hey, sales went up 17% or something like that. What you should see is lower turnover. You should see lower incidences with HR, and I'm being serious about that. You should see a higher level of collaboration with employees. You should see managers feeling a little less stressed. You also should see productivity increase overall. So whether that's things being completed on time or on budget or whatever those aspects are, you should see that, because people, when you've done the leadership training and you've given your folks those skill sets, those are the attributes that they transfer over to their people. So the whole anxiety and stress level of the team comes down, because everyone's talking now openly and we're feeling more connected to each other, and we can push our organization forward. So productivity is huge, turnover is huge, stress issues with HR are big, and then also just overall vibe of the organization should feel more positive and more open and more communicative.
Yeah, I think those are really valid points. One additional thing that I've seen some organization doing, and those are like surveys, confidential surveys of getting a sense of how are we tracking, how are we doing. We also see that happening not just on teams, but we also around board tables, for example, board satisfaction studies, staff satisfaction ones. All of those ones are critical. We're coming, I can't believe this, how quickly time always goes by. So Larry, I wanted to thank you for being with us, but I wanted to give you a minute to maybe give some 1 minute like closing statement or some wrap-up comments, maybe something we haven't gotten to, because I can imagine that we could have this conversation easily for another hour.
I am a broken record. Really it's core values and it's environment. And it's in your leaders wearing those three hats, that manager, mentor, and coach hat. If you are at the top of your organization, or if you're a senior person where you have a lot of effect on this, please spend time on the safety, belonging, and mattering. That really is the most important thing you should take from today. If you are a new leader or a lower level, you can still do all of that work with your individual team. If you can't affect the whole organization, you can still affect your individual team. You may have a big organization that has a big culture, but every team has its own mini culture. And it's very, very much based on how the leader connects with their people. So no matter where you are, you can have a big effect on your team, but that safety, belonging, and mattering, to me, Mishka, is the most important thing you can do as a leader.
I fully agree with you. It is critical. So Larry, thank you so very much. We're getting a lot of wonderful comments here in the chat, but thanks to you specifically and how insightful this last hour has been. That is the purpose of our Lunch and Learns. And if any one of you in attendance have any topic ideas or speakers that you wish for us to consider for an upcoming Lunch and Learn, please let us know. I can be reached at mishka@gncc.ca or info@gncc.ca. So we're always here for you. So our thanks to you, Larry. Our thanks to the YMCA of Niagara for actually bringing us all together and being the power behind it. And thank you to Sun Life for all the financial tips that are also so critical to us. So thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.